They called her the most feared woman of her age. An empress draped in silks and jewels, her smile radiant as the sun, yet her cruelty deeper than the darkest abyss. From the moment she stepped into power, whispers followed her every move. Some called her beautiful, others called her cursed, but all agreed she was dangerous. In the chronicles, her name was written with trembling ink, not for victories, not for peace, but for the single command she gave, a command that shattered families and scarred an empire. She ordered 1,000 men stripped of their manhood, transformed into shadows of what they once were, silent figures bound forever to her will. So stay with me now, for this is not just history, but the tale of an empress whose lust and cruelty became legend. She was not born into obscurity, nor raised in the shadows of lesser courts. From her earliest days, she moved through corridors lined with gold and marble. A child destined not merely to watch history, but to command it. Tutors filled her mind with poetry, philosophy, strategy, and scripture. But beneath those lessons she learned something far more dangerous: the art of people. How to read a man's heart by the flicker in his eyes, how to bend him with a single glance, or make loyalty into chains strong enough to bind generals and priests alike. By the time she came of age, the empire already trembled at her presence. Suitors from every land flocked to her court. Kings eager to unite kingdoms, warriors hoping to win her hand, priests believing her chosen by the gods, all dazzled by her beauty, all blinded by her grace. And yet, behind those glittering eyes burned something none of them could name. A hunger that no crown, no temple, and no man alive could ever satisfy. The palace bloomed with pleasure, as if the walls themselves pulsed with music and laughter. Feasts stretched long into the night, lasting until dawn painted the sky crimson. Tables bent under the weight of roasted meats, golden goblets overflowed with wine and honey, and the air was thick with incense, so heavy it drowned the prayers of the pious who begged for restraint. In those glittering halls, men competed for her favor. Young nobles polished their words like swords. Bold soldiers boasted of victories that meant little to her. And even married lords risked their honor for a single smile. For to be chosen by the empress was to taste heaven itself. A single glance from her could raise a man higher than gold or bloodline ever could. But to fall from her favor was to know hell. Men who had once basked in her warmth were suddenly cast aside, their reputations shattered, their voices silenced, their very names erased from the chronicles. The court called it love, a romance befitting the most radiant ruler of the age. But beyond the palace walls, the whispers told another story, not of love, but of madness. A madness wrapped in silk, more dangerous than steel, and more intoxicating than wine. At first her appetite seemed harmless, the indulgence of a ruler who believed the world her toy. She demanded lavish banquets, endless music, and the constant devotion of courtiers eager to please. For a time it looked like nothing more than the whims of a spoiled monarch. But soon her desires grew darker and stranger. She demanded not just loyalty, but complete surrender. It was not enough to bow before her throne or pledge oaths of service. She wanted more. She wanted to own the very hearts and bodies of those who surrounded her. She wished to be encircled by men who could never betray her. Men who could never touch another woman, never whisper their secrets to rivals, never abandon her side for the fleeting charms of another court. Only in such absolute devotion did she feel secure. Only in such control could she quiet the hunger that gnawed at her soul. And then came the words that would stain her reign forever. A command spoken with chilling calm that echoed through the marble halls like a death knell. 1,000 men, to be taken, to be remade, so that they might serve her. Not for a season, not for a lifetime, but body and soul for all eternity. The day the decree was spoken, silence fell across the court like a heavy shroud. Nobles who once prided themselves on courage now stared at the floor, their lips pressed shut in terror. No one dared to object, for even a whisper of resistance meant ruin. The scribes bent over their parchment, writing as quickly as trembling hands allowed, their quills scratching like knives against stone. Every word was a sentence, every line a mark of doom, each stroke sealing the fate of men who had yet to hear their destiny. 1,000 chosen, 1,000 taken. Fathers, sons, brothers' names written down with cold finality. Some, blinded by ambition, volunteered willingly, hoping that obedience might earn them a lifetime of favor. Others were dragged forward in chains, their cries echoing against the marble pillars. In the palace halls, there was no mercy. The weeping of families was drowned beneath the thunder of drums. The sound of struggle was muffled by music, and the thick incense that clung to the air turned grief into silence. And above it all, seated on her throne, the Empress laughed in delight, her jewels flashing in the torchlight, her smile crueler than any blade. From that day forward, her palace became unlike any other in the known world. The echo of laughter and song that once filled its corridors was replaced by silence. The marble halls, gilded with gold and firelight, were now walked by figures who spoke no words. Their eyes cast down, their voices forever stilled. They moved like phantoms, gliding through the chambers. Some poured her wine, their hands steady yet lifeless. Others fanned the silks that draped her throne, their faces blank, unreadable, as if carved from stone. And many stood guard at her chamber doors, their presence heavy, their silence more fearsome than 100 swords. To outsiders, they appeared loyal attendants, servants devoted to the glory of their Empress. But within the palace walls, whispered behind locked doors, they were called something else. They were not men, not courtiers, not soldiers. They were her shadows, and the Empress thrived in their presence. She grew more radiant with each passing season. As though feeding upon the silence around her, her power became absolute, unchallenged. Her pleasure, unrestrained, spilled across every banquet, every decree, every night within those haunted halls. Not everyone celebrated the rule of the Empress. Behind jeweled curtains and banquet halls, whispers began to stir among the nobles. They spoke in hushed voices, warning one another that what seemed like splendor was, in truth, decay. Priests, cloaked in holy robes, condemned her as cursed, claiming that no mortal could demand such unnatural devotion without inviting the wrath of the gods. Generals, hardened by years of battle, muttered that an empire cannot be ruled by lust, that swords and armies must be guided by reason, not desire. But those who spoke too loudly soon paid the price. One by one, their voices disappeared from the court. A senator who dared raise his voice returned weeks later, pale and broken, his words reduced to trembling silence. Another, a general beloved by his men, was never seen again, his name scratched out of records as though he had never lived. Whispers claimed he had been dragged into the crypts, to join the ranks of shadows that haunted her palace. The court learned quickly silence was survival. Eyes that once dared to meet hers now turned to the floor. Laughter at feasts died upon the lips of those too afraid to speak. Even the air in her presence grew heavy, as though the palace itself demanded obedience, and so the Empress reigned in terror. Her throne was not only built of gold and silk, but of broken lives, shattered loyalty, and fear so deep it turned the bravest men into cowards. Outside the glittering walls of the palace, anger spread like wildfire. In the crowded markets, whispers turned into open curses. Merchants told stories of sons taken in the night, of villages emptied of their strongest men, of families left to starve while their protectors served a mistress they would never choose. Mothers wept in the doorways of their homes, their tears hardening into curses upon her name. Fathers, their faces carved by grief, sharpened their blades in silence, their eyes burning with the fury of men robbed of their bloodlines. Around the village fires, elders told tales of an empress who had traded her soul for power. A woman who ruled not as flesh and blood, but as a specter cloaked in jewels. Priests thundered from their pulpits, calling her a demon in human form. A curse upon the land sent to test the faith of the people. They warned that no empire, no matter how strong, could survive when its heart was blackened by cruelty. And yet for all this hatred, her armies still obeyed. For even hardened soldiers who had seen death on the battlefield trembled at the sight of her shadows. The 1,000 silent figures who never left her side. The broken men who guarded her chambers by day and her throne by night. But no reign of terror lasts forever. Even the strongest throne crumbles when the earth beneath it begins to rot. When famine struck the land, the empire's golden harvests withered, and the people who once bowed in silence now starved in their homes. Their fear, once heavy as chains, began to burn away. Replaced by fire, by fury, by desperation. The gates of the palace trembled beneath the fists of the hungry. 1,000 voices roared in unison, the cries of mothers, fathers, and children blending into one furious storm. Nobles, once her companions in pleasure, now turned their backs, choosing survival over loyalty. Generals who had once sworn oaths of eternal service abandoned her cause, marching their soldiers away and leaving her halls unguarded. The Empress who had ruled through terror now stood in silence, her shadows powerless to shield her from the tide of rage. Some say she was dragged screaming into the streets, her jewels ripped away by the very people she once commanded. Others whisper she slipped away through secret tunnels, vanishing into the darkness of exile, her fate forever uncertain. But on one truth the chronicles agree: her empire crumbled. Her throne lay shattered, and her name, once spoken with trembling reverence, was cursed for all eternity. And so her story lingers, drifting like smoke through the corridors of time, a warning carried across centuries, retold by mothers to their children, by priests in their sermons, and by travelers who swore they had seen the ruins with their own eyes. It is the tale of a ruler who believed her power eternal, her pleasure untouchable, her throne unshakable. Perhaps she was mad, driven beyond reason by desire. Perhaps she was cursed, chosen by fate to embody cruelty itself. Or perhaps she was something more ordinary and therefore more terrifying. A human soul consumed by a hunger no crown, no empire, no earthly glory could ever satisfy. Even now, in the shattered ruins of her palaces, they say the night air carries her presence. Step inside those crumbling halls, and you may hear it. The faint murmur of whispers clinging to the stones, the soft echo of laughter that does not belong to the living, and the silence endless and heavy. The silence of 1,000 shadows that never left her side,